Alright, YouTube, got a interesting project here, kind of going in uncharted territory to some extent. I'm going to be changing the steering column, or most of it, on my 91 Explorer. Let me show you why. When I got it, somebody had been jealous and decided to steal it. So what we're left with is a column that works, but is not ideal. We gotta jiggle that. That thing that's here that you flip normally is gone, long gone. A lot of this is busted. It's just in poor condition. So what I got here is a new to me, column off of an 89 Ranger. Now, I didn't realize it early on, but I didn't think about the column shifter. Mine's an automatic, where the Ranger was a manual. And obviously, aside from the column shifter, there's another difference. This guy right here. That's what goes down to the transmission to select the gear. And it wraps around the column and is part of the column, which would be the opposite end of this, sitting down in there. So I can't use this. I might be able to, but I'm not going to go that far. So I pulled this out, and I'm just going to swap this guy in. I've done a lot of looking, and a lot of the same stuff is there. This cutout is the same. There's these two holes here for the teeth on the lever. They mount to the column the same with 3 bolts, which are Torx with these little grabby things. They go in there like that, and they screw down and hold the inside of the column on, the housing, if you will. I don't know if that's the right name, but that's what I'm calling it. So, and then they got the little clip here for the cable for the indicator. And just a few things. I mean, everything looks the same. The main difference why I'm swapping this in is for the key, but also this is a different design than the Explorer. For whatever reason, it physically won't fit in there. Another reason is that this will give me tilt steering, where the Explorer doesn't have it. So, looking at this hole here, everything lines up. See, there's the hole in the housing there, and here's the 2 bolts that go in for the lever. There's these pins here, the clips, if you will. Then there's a hole for the indicator cable and a little clip here. So everything looks like it should transfer over. When I pulled that one from the junkyard, all I had to do was drop this panel and then the 2 bolts for the housing down. And I think when I do that on here, I should have enough access to reach the Torx screws here, and then back up in there. And then there's a third on this side. Right there. Right there. So, I should be able to swap it over. But that's what this video is all about, is my process documenting that. Because I never saw anything else on YouTube about that. So, here we go. Okay, so first things first, before I put this guy in, I was wanting to get in there and put some new grease into the mechanism that allows the tilt, because it looks like nylon gears or something like that. But this bolt, and then you flip it over, and this bolt on the opposite side, they're pretty large Torx. They're T30. And try as I might, I wasn't able to get them to budge, and the last thing I want to do is strip it out or mess it up. Plus, this spring puts tension on this whole assembly, and I don't want to try to fight it to put it back together. So I brought a grease gun with a needle to try and get in there, and that's what I'm going to try. These 2 bolts on either side here, they are not Torx 30. They are, where did I put it? They are T40. They're a little bit bigger. And I tried to get it open again, and it barely budged, and I don't know if I'm tightening it or loosening it, since this is more of a safety issue thing. They might have been reverse thread or something like that. Anyway, this little clip comes off, and there's bearings there, and once you have that out, there's a little bit of play there, and that groove moves back a bit. So I shot some grease in there and tried to grease this up as much as I could, pushing grease in with my finger, trying to pack it. Not ideal, but it's without disassembling this further, I think that's the best that I'm going to do. It feels really smooth, so I'm not too worried about it. I'll also get some grease inside there. Since there's no electronics there, it doesn't matter. Because it goes down to this bar, to the switch, which I don't have out here right now. But I'm going to pack that all together with lube, all in there, with this end here. Yeah, so I'll try to get it a little bit more assembled and start pulling the other one out. Okay, we got this access panel out. That was 2 7mm screws, like that. Now I'm going to try to get this bolt and this bolt off, so this whole column drops down a bit, so that I can access these pins, clips, whatever you want to call them. Battery is disconnected since we're dealing with high amperage ignition wires back there. Okay, and taking this apart, the gear shift selector screws in right here. That is a T15, and then I carefully just undid this loop from this guy here, and now he can go around, because he was stopping me from dropping this whole thing down. There we go. Okay, so hopefully that bought us enough room to get in there. Now, depending on what tools you have, I'm kind of using this weird combination ratchet here, 1/4 inch, with just a 1/4 inch socket to accommodate the Torx. I don't have enough room in here to get this guy, so I had to drop this bracket down. I just removed 3 of the bolts, which loosened things up enough for me to get in there. There we go. There we go. 1 down, 2 more to go. Okay, I got those 3 out, but then I remembered this this wire here goes into the ignition switch, the actual what does the heavy lifting, and this needs to be unbolted back in here. There's 2 of them on the side. Okay, the bolt, this guy that goes down there that holds it in place, is a 14mm. Now you might want to think ahead and put some PB blaster on it. Mine was pretty well stuck in there. Plus it's right next to the exhaust manifold. And also turn your wheels a bit. I had to turn mine to the right just a little bit so you can get access from the top. Straight shot. So theoretically, this guy is what is inside that yoke, which is held in place with the bolt, and it should slide out without having to remove any of that other stuff. Okay, now we can see the switch that is actuated by this rod. We need to remove this before this whole thing slides out. These bolts or nuts are 7/16, well, 7/16 fits. Not sure what that might be in millimeters. They were barely on there, so I just broke them loose, and now I can spin them off by hand. So now, the whole thing should pop off, leaving our actuator rod there. I'm not even going to unplug that. So, if I'm lucky, okay, I think the shifter might have to come out. Let's see here. Okay, so this pin, which looks to be splined on the end here, came out of this. And like that, holds that in place. And okay, that guy comes out. What now? There's gotta be. How does this come out? Okay, after further disassembly, I pulled the shaft out. Actually came right out after unbolting these three, which are the same Torx screws that we encountered in the back. I can't seem to figure out a way without removing this whole column to slide this piece off with the shifter in the way, because this comes off but it's hitting against here, this piece. So without having to remove the whole column and the shift linkage and all that shit that's on the other side of that panel, see, there's not even a slot in the tube to slide this part out, to slide the shifter out. It's kind of weird. I don't know why they would have done that or how they got it apart, but I'm thinking, just to get this old junker housing off of here, cutting here and down here, which should allow this whole piece to slide off without interference from the shifter. So that's what I'm going to try next. Okay, I cut a piece off and was able to slide it off, and so I don't think it'll affect the integrity, because this whole area is missing anyway. I think it still should be strong enough, so if I cut the other one the same way but leave enough meat here, it should be okay. The shift lever, it looks like it's riveted in place. I don't see any hex marks or Torx or anything like that inside. This end piece must attach to a shaft that comes up from inside the engine compartment. So I think as long as I make those same cuts in this new one, that I should be able to slide it on and not have to mess with the shifting. Alright, got them both cut. Hope I didn't make a mistake. And we'll see if it fits. Okay, got the new column in. Pair of vice grips to rotate the steering wheel so that I can align it with the yoke for the box. Down in there. Something interesting is that even though it's a D shape, or it's flat on two ends, this only fits on that shaft one way. Once you rotate it the right way, you pop the bolt in real easy. Another thing I noticed is that on the automatic transmission column, is that there's a wavy washer nylon that sits on this lip here, that when this goes on, there's another shaft inside that is the shifting column that goes all the way to the front. That needs to be moved over because that is not in the manual transmission because there's no shaft inside for the column shift. So that needs to be transferred over. But so far, everything's looking so good. Also, inside here, these little ears with these familiar Torx screws that go in and clip it from the back, like so. I'm going to be putting some Permatex Blue on there to help lock them in because they were green from the factory. They put some kind of Loctite on there, as you can see. So better safe than sorry. And you may be wondering how you figure out where this guy should sit, because this actually moves back and forth. It's got slotted holes over there, right there. So it moves back and forth for adjustment. Well, the best way I can figure it is to turn your keys back into accessory, hold it, and then at the same time push forward with this, and it should click, and that is where it should sit. So I'm going to hold that there, and I guess I'll tighten that down first, finger tight. Hopefully that's got enough strength. Sounds pretty good to me. Yeah, I like that. Okay, another snag here. This bracket that the shifter rides along, it's held in by two screws here that go into this hole and this hole. On the manual steering column here, those holes are not tapped. Looking through my taps, I have a complete kit for Metrix, but this is a really weird tap size. This is actually 4 mil by 0.80 pitch. Now the closest I have here is 4 mil 0.75 pitch, which I tapped out the hole on the old one with this tap, and the screw fit a bit tight, but it worked and it didn't strip out. So that's what I'm going to do here. Okay, brackets on, holes are tapped. One thing I didn't notice, but I'm glad I didn't have any issues with, is that this notch here is actually in the casting of the manual transmission steering column. So that lines up perfectly. Let's see if I can get this. Looks perfect. I think it's time to put this bracket into place to hold everything up, to hold the column in place. It's fixed to it's fixed by these 4 bolts into the column itself, plus these 2 that we used earlier. They should all be 14 millimeter. I know these ones are. They look the same. So yeah, kind of self-explanatory there. They use these here, and then they bolt in up there, that guy. So I'm gonna Loctite these since these are yellow. They must have put some kind of Loctite on them from the factory. All I got here is the blue stuff, so that's what I'm gonna use. Okay, just a tip for getting this bracket on. These bolts were kind of hard to get into place, so I had to barely thread them in, all 4 of them, and then tighten them down that way. Now, these bolts that go here and here, that hold the whole column upright, they did not have, or don't look like they have Loctite on them from the factory. Just a little bit of rust. So I'm not going to Loctite them, especially since they have really long threads. And I think this is some kind of breakaway feature. It's nylon, it's where they sit. The other one had that same kind of feature too. And I think in the event of a head-on collision, that's meant to break rather than be rigid. So I'm not going to tighten these down as tight as I can. I'm just going to snug them and call it good. Okay, it's back in place. Now we got to run this cable keeper. I think mine's broken, but it's still good enough to screw in there. I think what I got to do is fit that over that. I meant to remove it. Okay, I got that piece wrapped around there. Now this hole is another one that's not tapped out, but this guy is a screw that goes in there, so I'm not too concerned about having threads. So I'm just gonna pop them in and see what happens. Absolutely no problems getting that guy in, even though my Torx bit was kind of funky. It's tight. I adjusted it a bit. For those that don't know, the adjustment guy, there's a wheel right here where my finger's on. If you adjust it back and forth, let me reach from under here. You see that? You can adjust it either way. Some vehicles seem to have it, some don't. Mine's a 91 and it has it, but I don't know. You'll have to see on yours. Okay. So looks like I need a little lube in there. Doesn't want to reset all the way unless I push it in. Well, let's get some lube in there. Well, the good news is I got some ATF in there. Bad news is I broke this. Come on, focus. Broke this right there. So I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to fix that. I think I might have temporarily fixed it. I took my torch and a pick, got the pick nice and red hot, and just melted whatever that is, nylon, Teflon, whatever it is, and kind of bridged the crack. Hopefully it holds. There's not much tension going on in there, and it seems to be okay. So I don't know. Something else to note, this is the harness that goes on the multifunction switch. See on the back side there. Two of my wires on this pull freely out. This guy here, it just pops right out. Yeah, that one's a high amperage one. So if that happens to you when you hook up your multifunction switch, if you ever replace this too, you need to make sure, look at the back side and make sure everything's plugged in properly. This is exactly what I'm talking about. I just snapped this connector in, and you can see this wire and that wire, the two green ones, backed out. So you need to make sure that they are fully seated. You need to push them in like that. Yeah, it's not ideal, but you know, it's the best you can do, really. I don't know that these connectors are available anywhere else, and swapping them out would be a pain in the ass. So you just got to make sure that they're all flush in there, otherwise you're gonna have issues. Now, see, that blue guy popped out too. Another thing to note is that these connectors should run behind the shift indicator, and naturally, as I realized that, I tried to move them through and broke my newly melted connection. So I'm gonna have to redo that. But I think it was strong enough had I not fucked around with that. So, take two. Okay, So you can see that with the wires running around there, there's barely any room for this cable to run through. So I'm gonna have to be very careful in melting that again.